We Santo, Man Kolnyang, Mike, Cholgrangawan, Yupin, Yarul Pandiri Chet Maniel, Anaketon Niel, Zillo, Winetonador. I think a kick, a book, a guard, a boy, and yelling at the quick thing. Gemana, when I jang along, I do Kagaparandi. I didn't major, Kubo, Makur, Kagaboli, who I got young, Pagari, Kagalang, Emmanuel, when you go. I think a kick, a book, a guard, a boy, and yelling at the quick thing. Gemana, when I jang along, I do Kagaparandi. I didn't major, Kubo, Makur, Kagaboli, who I got young, Pagari, Kagalang, Emmanuel, when a man you go. I think a kick, a book, a guard, a boy, and yelling at the quick thing. I think I will put off my video if we start, just to save us a bit of best internet.
Okay.
If we start, I might put off my video so that we can have a better internet.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, do that.
Yeah, just to
have
us have a better internet. Yeah, I think we can kick off. Let's try.
Thank you.
Let's kick off. Then I'll put off the video.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much to our viewers wherever you are tuning in. Welcome to Lagos State Media Beyond Boundaries. And in the studio with us is our usual guest, Mr. Edmond Yakani. And Edmond Yakani will be here briefly, like around 30 to 35 minutes, to brief the public on what is happening, the territorial ownership dispute between the border of South Sudan and Kenya in the place called Nadepal between Turkana and Taposa community. There are some videos and clips that has actually surfaced themselves on social media, Facebook, and some of them worried many citizens a lot. And Mr. Edmond Yakani will brief us on what is happening on the ground and what is the response from the national and the state government on the side of South Sudan. Mr. Edmond Yakani, give us your opening remark before Abraham Adit played a clip, and then we dive into our conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to seek a consent from the viewers of Lex Media because of the internet problem. I may put somewhere in the middle my video off so that we can save better internet. So I would like to register that so I don't see like, why am I speaking without a video? Simply just to save the internet. But to continue, thank you very much for hosting me in this particular talk show, of course, as a usual guest. And this development that is merging between the border of South Sudan and Kenya over territorial ownership of areas of Nadapal or between the ethnic groups of Toposa and Turkana is a bit disturbing, but I would like to say we are failing, not yet, there's no big tension, but tension are mounting. But that also comes in a very challenging moment where we have witnessed the visit of the 3 Christian religious leaders, Pope Francis, the Archbishop of Canterbury, and then the moderator of the General Assembly Church of Scotland. They visited the country, they left, and then this situation mounted. So we hope to hope for the best. We want to hope to see peace. And I hope that the two leadership can work out. But I'd like to say it's a bit disturbing moment. But of course, back home in Juba, we have witnessed a very good, beautiful tarmac road within a period of 1 week that we have never seen happen like that in the history of South Sudan. And we have seen the beautification of Juba has happened. The roads are very beautiful. So we hope that every month Pope visit us so that we can see Juba develop. But otherwise, we are happy, we're enjoying. It was the incident of Kajukeji. But we have seen Iso Kajukeji have drawn a lot of attention. The governor of Central Equatoria is there, and Wanega is there also as a vice president. And there's a lot of contamination going on around Kajukeji. But otherwise, that's the only event. And of course, we are aware that also there's a mounting tension between our ABA, but otherwise, the country is okay. So thank you for hosting me, and let's look at this issue of territorial dispute between South Sudan and Kenya. Thank you. Over there to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Edmond Yakani, for that update and briefing and your opening remark. We'll move to Abraham Adit to give us the clip for our viewers to understand the topic in which our guest is going to brief us about.
Okay.
Taramang beren. Taramang toldo. Hey! Yeah. Hey. Hello.
Mr. Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation held a meeting today with the Kenyan ambassador to South Sudan, Nando Samuel. Within that meeting, the subject matter of the tensions at the joint border were raised. Briefing the press on Thursday, a Foreign Affairs spokesperson, Adu Jokwen, said the government is on the top of the matter and that the minister is working tirelessly with the concerned stakeholders to restore peace between the communities living at the border.
The minister, on behalf of the government of South Sudan, would like to assure the people of South Sudan, especially those communities on the border, that the highest levels of government are aware of the sensitivities at our border and are working in cooperation with our neighbours to ensure peace, prosperity, and the maintenance of border integrity. On behalf of His Excellency President Salva Kiir Mayardit, the minister thanked the ambassador for the continued and historical support of Kenya to South Sudan. He looks forward to working on more projects of cooperation to continue strengthening our bilateral ties.
The Kenyan ambassador to South Sudan, Samuel Andua, stressed the need to live together as quite friends, saying there are a lot of things that the two countries depend on each for.
It's important that the two countries that are neighbors remain great friends as usual. History has it that during the liberation of this country, Kenya was one of the participants, and Kenya and South Sudan lived some kind of symbiotic life.
Look at these three maps of Kenya. Can you spot the difference? Now look at the northwestern tip of each of these three maps. The difference you see in each of them is what is likely to be the genesis of Kenya's first real quarrel with South Sudan. This is the Lemi Triangle, and the government of South Sudan is claiming it back. The region measures 10,000 square kilometers, bigger than many countries across the world. But why it is important now has less to do with its size than what could be under it. Oil and mineral riches have long been thought to be in the Lemi Triangle, and the discovery of oil in Gamia, about 100 kilometers away from the southern border of the Lemi Triangle, strengthens those assumptions. The government of Southern Sudan wants the Lemi Triangle based on its assertion that Kenya looks like this. This first picture shows Kenya at 1902. The straight line across from Lake Turkana westward was Kenya's first administrative border in that region, drawn by a British soldier named Philip Maud. But as time passed, constant attacks against the Turkana by the Toposa and Dachanes communities from southern Sudan and Ethiopia held it that the British government requested the Sudan Condominium, which had administrative power over Sudan, to redraw its boundaries to allow the King's Rifles to pursue bandits across the region, as well as for seasonal grazing of the cattle of the Turkana on both sides of the border. Thus, that tip of Kenya evolved into this. The Kenyan government would later build police posts there and assume administrative control of the region. And since before South Sudan's independence, the country had been in constant turmoil, that status quo was not challenged, up to today. Kenya's assertion of its ownership of the Lemi Triangle is a treaty drawn in 1932, where Sudan ceded administrative control of the region to Kenya. Assistant Minister for Foreign Affairs Richard Onyonka expressed surprise at South Sudan's move to go to the International Court for Justice over this, but said that if that was the decision that the South Sudanese had taken, then Kenya would also engage it legally. Given that this region has the potential for another three-letter word that isn't oil, war, Onyonka said that Kenya still considers South Sudan as a friendly nation. However, Onyonka also admits that security has been beefed up in the region. So will Kenya hold on to the Lemi Triangle? Or like the Migingo debacle, will the public be treated to a spectacle of a government's lack of drive to protect its territorial integrity? Time and the International Court of Justice hold that answer. John Alanamu, NTV.
Okay, that's the video. I have a second video. You guys want to pull up a second video and then you guys continue. Okay, Majo, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a second video to play. Give me a few minutes, and then we will start from there.
It's okay. It's fine. You can continue playing the second clip in order to give our viewers the insight of our topic.
Okay.
Kenya and Sudan at Kasarani. Soon thereafter, Attorney General nominated me to look at a very difficult problem that has persisted in this country or had persisted in this country from the time of independence. That is the difficulty of an international boundary between Kenya and Sudan. I was entrusted with that task. Ultimately, government, together with the British Council, sponsored me to undertake a Master's in Law program at London School of Economics, and as part of the LLM program, to undertake original research in Kenya-Sudan boundary. I was at LSC. I spent numerous hours at Public Records Office because commissioners, all the documents of this republic during the colony and protectorate status, all those documents are at Public Records Office. I'm sure commissioners, you know where Public Records Office is towards Heathrow Airport at Kew Gardens. So I had to commute from LSC, which is at the Strand, and go to this Public Records Office every other single day, and I acquired a wealth of material. In 1 minute, commissioners, at the turn of towards 1914, the boundary was defined by the British government as a straight line between two fixed points, or in the alternative, such a line that would give to us the customary grazing grounds of the Turkana. Those grazing grounds were never defined, but towards 1938, a survey party established that the boundary was slightly above the straight line. That was not to be. We went on, and Sudan demarcated what they call 1950 Sudanese patrol line. That Sudanese patrol line is what actually triggered my interest in this area. And by application of principles of international law, I actually established that when any government allows a competing government to administer an area, the doctrines of acquiescence, doctrines of renunciation of territory, they all kick in. I hope we'll have an opportunity to discuss this in greater detail, but in one sentence, we were able, or I was able in my research, to establish that the Sudanese patrol line, which is a considerable distance from the straight line, is now the international boundary. So, commissioners, I'm sure you all remember, in 1980s, the Kenya-Sudan boundary was indicated as a straight line. Then in 1985-86, we had an extended boundary that went towards Sudan. The difference in graphic terms is that through this research and the validation that went on in government, we were able to change our international boundary from the straight line to the new boundary, and we acquired 9,680 square kilometers. To put it in context, the former Western province was 7,400 square meters. So we acquired a territory larger than the former Western province. This is one of my research papers. It went through government, it went through validation. I cannot say that it was singular effort. The Attorney General and other organs of state all participated, and ultimately we changed our boundary. I then went to private practice from 1987.
Thank you so much, Abraham Adit, for giving us such powerful and evidence-based clip. There are evidence in those two clips that you just played, and we will give chance to our guest, Edmund Yakani, to update us on what is happening between the border of Nadepal. Kindly, can you activate your mic, Edmund Yakani, and update us on what is happening? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I hope I'm clear.
Yes, you are clear, yes.
Yeah, what is going on is that tension is mounting at the border of South Sudan and Kenya in Nadepal. And the trigger for the mounting tension is that Kenya is attempting to move at least further to South Sudan. And of course, this dispute was not new. It's almost for the last 4 years. We have been in this tension at the border of Nadepal in terms of control of taxes, control of security entry points. Out publicly that it's redeploying forces to perceive its concept of extension under the what we call the lapset, and that have annoyed the communities of South Sudan, and in particular the Toposa at the border, who are inhabitants of Nadepal. So the Toposa mobilized themselves. Yes, there are confrontation, but those confrontations are not deadly, and those confrontations are not bad. But as we speak by now, the tension is mounting at the border. And you have seen the last video. Of course, it's not been played a lot, but you can see evidence that since 1986, Kenya was extending its move towards annexing South Sudan land. And this video, the last one, have shown very clear that if we were to go to court of law, we have a credible evidence to claim back our borders, which is a Kenyan researcher, a legal researcher did. So that's what's happening. So this tension is a bit disturbing because if Kenya is to deploy its forces, as South Sudan, I don't think we have enough forces to go for such confrontation. And you might have seen in some of the videos, the Toposa youth are already mobilizing, or the Toposa population, male, are mobilizing to confront any attempt of Kenya extending. So the chances that they're going to have a state forces confronting communal forces at the border due to territorial ownership between South Sudan and Kenya over Nadapal is very high. So Kenya will be an organized forces of the state, while South Sudan will be much more the communities who wake up to protect the encroachment of Kenyan government into South Sudan. And you can see evidence was very clear that Kenya keep on attempting encroaching into the land of South Sudan. And it's not only Kenya, actually all our neighbors are practicing the same. Sudan did a lot of annexation of our land. They have encroached our land. Uganda have encroached our land in the side of Elegu. DRC recently have been encroaching. I remember when Clement was governor and when Adil became a governor, there's a dispute over our borders with DRC. Central Africa is doing the same. So all our neighbors, because we're busy fighting each other, our neighbors are trying to take advantage of our violence to scoop or to encroach to our land. So I think we are at a weaker point as a country. Why? Because our internal crises have taken a lot of our energy instead of protecting our international borders. So that's really a big issue. That's why we are now. And it's going to be that how the Topos are mobilizing. I've seen some of the videos where people are saying, hey, the Topos are mobilizing themselves. Let's do Turkana. That's the situation that we're in now. In terms of government to government, we have seen an attempt, and the video showed very clear. Our Minister of Foreign Affairs have met in South Sudan, and we're all aware. We have seen the video that our Minister of Foreign Affairs met with the Kenyan ambassador in South Sudan to discuss that. And as we speak now, the governor of Eastern Equatoria, Luis Lobonglo Jore, is at the border Nadapal, engaging with the commissioner of Turkana County. But I think the competition is really linked to resources. Kenyan want to encroach to our land and they want to claim the resources at the border. And specifically, when there is discovery of oil and likely other natural resources, other minerals. So I think that's the problem. And we are blessed that our borders are all rich. But because internally we are so much engaging ourselves, the neighbors take advantage of that, coming to encroach to in that particular area. So I think that is where we are. So in the border with Kenya, the tension is mounting. But we wish for the best that the two governments can engage, the two governments can not allow violence to take place. But I feel it, and I think it on. So we can file a case to either East African court or we can go to international court to file a case on behalf of the communities of Toposa at the border over the ownership of Nadapal or the definition of the territorial boundaries. Good enough, as you say, the second video proved Kenyan's evidence that they have encroached the international borders, and that's a Kenyan scholar. So for me, such videos, we may need to keep them in our archives. So we may need to start building a literature of the actual definition of the territorial border. So that is where we are now. And that has affected the trade between Kenya and South Sudan because of the mounting tension at Nadapal point. So Nadapal checkpoint or the cross-border of Nadapal as a trade is concerned is completely closed and it's down. The movement is not as such as we wish. And you have seen our ministers tweeting that comes from the area, like the Minister of Environment, Josephine Nafon have tweeted several times, even she have engaged in her social media, challenging the Turkanas not to play with the borders and to not take advantage of that because we're internally engaged and they want to encroach to South Sudan. So there's high chances that that tension may end up to another different level. Of course, we have opportunities of mitigation at hand. The opportunity of mitigation at hand is that the concept of East African community, and this is my worry, if we were to mess up between South Sudan and Kenya, that will mess up East African keeping force in DRC. So consequences of our tension may affect our soldiers under the East African peacekeeping force. So, and the region of East Africa gradually is becoming messy over competition, over resources at the border point. Uganda and Kenya have similar issues. We're now opening up with Kenya over Lemi Triangle, and likely we have also our concept with Sudan fighting over the resources. DRC is another area where we're there because of resources competition between the neighbors. So I think our government need to take it serious. And for me, my appeal is that President is supposed to assign the Minister of Foreign Affairs to form a technical committee to engage with the Kenyans, and shouldn't be one-off engagement. Should be consistent engagement that digging out in the actual history of the borders and start pursuing Kenyan government to accept the actual borders that is defined by the colonial history of the British or by the independence of Kenya and independence of Sudan before become independent South Sudan, because the borders of South Sudan independency is not the borders of Sudan's independency. So our allegiance in South Sudan is paid to the Sudan borders during the independence, during the colonial time. So we can't say because South Sudan got independence in 2011, so we start drawing international borders of South Sudan in 2011. No, we drew the international borders of South Sudan per 1st January 1956 together. So I think that's my briefing. Thank you over there.
Thank you so much, Edmond Yakani, for your briefing. Actually, you stated very clearly that when we look at the two clips which were played by Abraham Adit, there are two evidence in those documents or in those clips. And the two reports, which one, the one that shown three different map of Kenyan map, since 1920s up to late 2000, that showing totally three different maps. And those three maps were designed by Kenyan, and it was a Kenyan journalist who was reporting on NTV Kenyan television. And he stated it very clearly that the Kenyan encroached to South Sudan territory, which is larger than other countries in the world. Which means the Lemi Triangle is even bigger than Burundi or even Rwanda in that case, or in that sense. On the same note, the legal consultant and researcher, Fred Ngoti, also mentioned it clearly, and we have heard about that. But the question is, Mr. Edmond Yakani, is our national government aware of this? And if yes, what is the response to the Kenyan government? We understand when it comes to the territorial dispute, it is not the matter of meeting with the ambassador of that country. It is the issue of government to government through Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And we have had the Minister of Interior of Kenya, I think yesterday, but one or last week, is stating it very clearly in Turkana district or Turkana county that they will increase the national police at the border and they will arm them. And that statement is on the public domain. What was the response from South Sudan government? Thank you.
I think starting at the point of the Kenyan Minister of Interior, he didn't only say that they increased the police at the borders. Even he have made a statement, which is a very bad statement, with reference to East African Protocol of Peace and Security. Even he said they're going to mobilize the communities and arm the communities. That's what the minister said in his speech, which is about a week ago, because he didn't only stop that we're going to increase the number of the Kenyan police, which is a formal institution, but they have mentioned even they're going to mobilize the communities and arm the communities. And in that video, I've seen community mobilization. I think what the Tobosa is doing is the same thing that the minister is doing. And that contradicts a lot of protocol of East African community in terms of peace and security if a government official of a member state issue that statement. I think for us here, we are trying to pursue what Juba is doing, is that Juba is trying to pursue a diplomatic approach by meeting the ambassador. And I think the ambassador is a low profile person because you need to communicate to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and Minister of Foreign Affairs communicate. I think our ministers of defense and security need to go to the borders in the same manner as the Kenyan have did. Either our Minister of Interior or Minister of Defense have to go to the border. And I think also we need to send a message that also we're beeping up our presence at the borders as a formal forces, whether police or military. We need to send that signal. Or if it is possible, actually, His Excellency President is supposed to make a phone call to William Ruto and raise that up as a president. Say, look here, we're a bit concerned about the development at the borders because that development have impact on trade and it have consequences on both countries. They're competing for resources that they have not yet explored. But the existing economical activities will have huge impact on Kenya and huge impact on South Sudan. So I think His Excellency President calling his counterpart, William Ruto, is very important to make sure that the messages and also the propaganda of threatening and posting bully attitudes and scaring attitudes need to be stopped from Kenyan side, because they believe that we're weak. I was talking to one of them today. I said, look here, there's one thing about South Sudanese. When you see us fighting ourselves, you may see us that we're weak. But the moment we define it as our common enemy, the energy we have will be triple the energy of fighting ourselves. And I gave him the case study of Hijilich, when Sudan was take advantage the way how we walk to Hijilich. So I said, please don't try to make us forget our internal crisis and we see you as a common enemy. And the same thing we have shown the system of Sudan by then when they're fighting us and when you put energy. So when South Sudanese put energy and put attention to Kenya, it will be terrible. And we are people who have, throughout our lives since 1947, the gun sounds is not anything for us. It's just like a music you're playing in Congo in a club. So please, I told him we are so bad, we are mad when you turn against you. So I think there's a need for our leadership to avoid further escalation, to engage proactively, as you said. It's not only limited for meeting ambassador of Kenya and you say that's the end. No, we either send a delegation to Kenya or His Excellency President call, and we send our defense and security forces to go to the ground. So they send us a signal that, okay, if you're intending to beep up, also we're trying to beep up. Because I know our governor, Luis Lobong Lojore, as we speak now, he is at the borders in Adapal. And of course, remember, Luis Lobong Lojore shared the border common interest in terms of ethnic identity. Turkana and Toposa, these are close brothers. So he might have been engaging the Turkana's leaders at that level. But there's no visibility of Lobong's being at the border, like the way how Kenyans are using media. We're not so much in front of the media to show us what we're doing. The only media we have is the one of the Minister of Foreign Affairs meeting our Kenyan ambassador. So I think the response of Juba is still slow and it's not timely. And I'm a bit concerned about that. And my appeal is that Juba needs to be proactive on international borders, because if we maintain the same strategy we maintain with Sudan, that made Sudan to succeed in annexing quite a number of our lands, because of the fear that if we open a front confrontation with Sudan, we're weaker, Kenya may use the same strategy and they may take quite a number of our land, they may encroach. Even Uganda have did the same. So likely, the moment we come and consolidate our nationalism, we stand as a nation, we have lost chunk of our land, and maybe also we have lost our possible resources at the borders. So it will be too late for us. So I think it's a high time. But also I think that sends signal to our political elites. You know, there's one video I like to trigger. I don't know what I want to play it. I don't know how can I get it. There's a video of two antelopes fighting. The antelopes were fighting and the lion was coming from a far distance. Because the antelope were busy fighting each other, the lion was able to succeed to take one antelope among the two they're fighting. They forgot they're fighting the common enemies coming to attack them, and they lost one antelope. I think that is a problem with our political elites. They are busy fighting themselves and they forget about the common enemy. And now the common enemy is our neighbors encroaching into our land and claiming the junk of a land that have resources. And remember the research of the Kenya was saying they have claimed a land from 1986 more bigger than the actual land of Turkana province. So from Lemi Triangle. And I think that's a very clear indicator that because our elites are busy dealing with each other, our neighbors are encroaching to our land. So I think Juba leadership and the political elites of different political establishments need to start questioning themselves. Is their internal engagement a blessing to the country or it's a curse? The moment they come to realize it's a curse, will the upcoming generation not blaming that actually you messed us up? You sold out our country. You make our neighbors take advantage of your disputes and have reduced our country. So I think it's a really a big national call for political responsibility, maturity, and commitment for the country to be stable and for us to have attention towards protection of our international borders. So I think Juba need to really engage. I've never seen so much proactive role except the Minister of Foreign Affairs meeting with the Ambassador of Kenya. And as I said, Ambassador is a low-grade person. But also the borders, as Governor Luis Lobong Lojore is the one going. Remember, he is a governor of a state. And this is an issue of an international border that requires central government, which is a prerogative, constitutional responsibility of central government to protect our international borders. So we hope that some of the ministers, like Minister of Interior, Defense, or National Security, could have joined Luis Lobong Lojore at the borders and make a statement, also send signal. If you're beeping up, we're beeping up. If you're ready, we're ready. So if there's also tanks at the borders, also we saw ours. So that at least we We start showing them that we're ready. If you want to confront us, we're ready. But at least we have seen how much the Toposa community are sending signal in mobilizing themselves that this is the last thing that we can give up. So I think that's my message.
Thank you, Edmund Yakani. We have one question from one of our viewers, Mr. Emmanuel Kenyi, that what could be the impact
over to you there.
of that conflict at the border to our refugees in Kakuma? Actually, Mr. Edmund Yakani, my brother, who is our viewer, Emmanuel Kenyi, is looking at the impact if we engage now in a conflict with the Uganda or with the Kenya rather, then what will be the fate of our refugee in Kakuma and those who are resident actually in Kenya, from all the way from Lodwar to Eldred, Nakuru to Nairobi. So basically that's what his questions intend, and he really need your thoughts on that. We have another question from one of our viewers, Mayigdi Kir. Why our citizens are seriously fighting over internal land grabbing than external land grabbing? So those are the two questions displayed by our brother Abraham Adit, who is controlling the show. And we really need your thought on that, Mr. Edmond Yakani. And before you get into those two questions, it seems like our government need you activists to send a signal to them. And while you will be answering those two questions, the question of land grabbing within South Sudan, people are so vocal about it, and the land encroachment from neighboring state, and we are silent about it. You will also answer the question of lawmakers in that country. Our lawmakers, most of them are social media addicts. They always see anything running on social media on Facebook. But what prevents them not to raise such issues in the house of lawmaking in our country? Mr. Edmund Yakani seemed to have lost the contact due to internet connectivity, and since the beginning of our show, he was having challenge with the internet. I think that's what happened to him. But to our viewers, you ask valid questions. Those questions are valid and are genuine. So I think Mr. Edmund Yakani will come back. Let me yield it back to Abraham Adit in order to give us his perspective and his thoughts on the same note. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Brother Majok. Yeah, while we're waiting for Edmund to return to answer those two questions, he's coming back. So, Majok, when I was in South Sudan in Nairus in 91, 92, the border was not Nadapal. The border of South Sudan and Kenya was Key Base, which is close to Lokchokyo. So when I hear now Nadapal is a border between Kenya and South Sudan, I was surprised, because I know that area very well. That's where I grew up. So before we came to Kakuma. So I was wondering why they moved the border from Key Base to Nadapal. Nadapal is close to Nairus. In other words, I hear that even Kenyans that go inside Nairus. So this is a very serious challenge. And the government of South Sudan have to take this seriously, because the Kenyans are taking our land away from us. So this is welcome back, Edmund. Let me yield the microphone back to Edmund while he's having a network issues. Go ahead, Edmund.
Yeah. I have the internet issues, but picking up from the two questions. One question is that, yes, if this become a violent tension, automatically will have impact on our refugees being in Kenya, in the various camps, and Kakuma in particular, and residents in Kenya, because it means any violence breaking out over the border dispute, it will raise feelings of xenophobia, it will raise hatred, it will raise hostile propaganda, it will raise a lot of issues that may become issue of discriminations against nationals. And if our citizens are affected in Kenya, whether being residents or being refugees, in return, also this will affect Kenya here. And economically, it may affect the business in Kenya. It may affect also us in terms of economic. So there's a mutual benefit that we need to avoid violence. Violence is not the option. Dialogue is the best option. But as my brother have said before I could come in, that our government is weak in protecting our international borders. Yes, you may have your internal crisis, but you need to protect your international borders. It's a matter of sending delegations. It's a matter of negotiating. It's a matter of preventing. Somebody will say, like, we need the lifting of arms embargo. How do you? Yes, we may need to lift arms embargo because of this particular crisis. But before you reach there, what are you doing? And why do you allow the soft landing on encroachment of your neighbors? So our neighbors are really encroaching so much into our borders. Kenya is scooping, Sudan is scooping, Uganda is scooping. So now we shall lose much of our land. As like my brother have said, is that you leave Nadapal, which is now under really serious attack. I will tell you soon, Kajukeji even, Uganda will take it over. The way how Moyo is encroaching with Tamak Road. Moyo is approaching, Moyo have left its actual borders. Moyo is now encroaching to Kajukeji. So as we keep on fighting internal, we're losing the lands at DRC level. But so I think for me, our government need to take serious. And the best is for our government to take this as a national security issue and assign a working team over that. And President himself, it have to be part of his day-to-day business in terms of coming in and making a call to his counterpart in Kenya, because it's really a big issue under it, under the needs of those land as the resources. And the discovery of the resources have encouraged our neighbors to encroach to our land. So I think, as my brother said, is that our government need to take it serious. And obviously, it will have impact on our relations in terms of societal setups like refugees, South Sudanese in Kenya, also Kenyans in South Sudan, by the way, they have huge number of their citizens of both countries become a target of a dispute over territorial ownership. We don't, and by the way, we need to avoid building more Kashmir between us and our neighbors. Because if we start building more Kashmir, or the Lemi Triangle is now a Kashmir between us and Kenya, like Kashmir between Pakistan and India. So we don't want to create more Kashmirs at our borders. So I think our government take a serious move, and they need to engage in relation to that. So that's what I would like to say from my side. In terms of land grabbing is a big issue, whether internal or external is a big issue. So we need to avoid the issue of land grabbing internally. So we should not make an excuse because externally our land has been grabbed. We should be promoting internal land grabbing. That one is not something we require to acquire land by our laws. But our external issue is more bigger than the internal. Because losing Lemi Triangle, or as my brother say, now Kenyan moving to Nadapal, from Nadapal soon to Naruz, if we're not careful, maybe soon they'll bring it close to the Kapoita, to the border. That's a very terrible move. And I think they're clever. They realize that we're at weaker point. And because at the borders, we don't have a proper border security, all the securities are in Juba, around houses of the generals, around some headquarters of the governors. We don't have a real presence of a defense force at the borders compared to what we have internally. So I think it's a national call. For me, it's nothing. It's a national political call for our leaders to rethink and care about the size of the country before they lose junk of the land to the neighbors. So over there to you.
Thank you so much, Edmond Yakani. Before you go off, because the internet is really disturbing us, and we might end the interview within the next few minutes. The question which I was posing to you, that is, what is the response or what is the mandate of our parliamentarians? Most of them are seeing all these videos on social media, and almost 80% of those parliamentarians, 650 MPs, are on Facebook. What prevents them not to raise such topic in the House of Lawmaking in our land? Thank you.
Our MPs are in recess. It's the members of the ABC, the chairperson of the specialized committees. I remember some weeks ago, they said they don't have an agenda, so they can't come from the recess, they extend their recess. So, but I think still the leadership of the parliament can raise a concern. And I think this could have been actually one of the issues for a quick recall, for an emergency recall of the parliament, by the way. If to be seriously politically, this is a quick issue for a call of the parliament to come and deliberate and communicate. That's one area that we need to look at it. Secondly, our EALA members, the South Sudanese members in the East African Parliament, what are they doing? They should raise a motion. We have 9 members in EALA. They should raise a motion now, what is going on in East African Parliament. Secondly, with the visit of the Pope, we are caught up. We failed to attend the East African Head of State Summit. We have raised it there. And I don't know why all vice presidents have to wait for Pope. I wish one of the vice presidents could have gone to represent president in the East African Head of State Summit and raise this issue there, because already when the summit is going on, this issue is beeping up. So we could have sent one of the VPs to go to the head of state and put a table and table that, oh, we're concerned, as we're all here, because we are asked there to contribute forces together with the Kenya and Uganda and redeploy to DRC. But also we need to ask, like, look here, guys, before we redeploy, we feel our neighbor Kenya is threatening our internal peace and security by encroaching to our borders. So we have events that we have missed. But I think still, as you say, there's an opportunity. If we have a serious parliamentarians, this is a subject of a recall of the parliament quickly. And specifically, if you follow the messages coming from the Minister of Interior of Kenya, it's a complete threat, an external threat to our peace and security in the country. So they could have come and someone and then raise something, or maybe send a delegation. Or even His Excellency President would have made a call and would have informed the nation that I, as a president, I've called my counterpart and have discussed on 1, 2, 3. And they would have made very clear, beyond the attempt made by Minister of Foreign Affairs in meeting the Kenyan ambassador. While in East African Parliament, we could have raised that, our MPs, they could have raised a motion. So I wish that our EALA members, even if our parliament at 600 level is in recess and they can't get concern, at least our EALA members should raise emotions over that. So for me, we have a lot of opportunity at hand. The only thing with South Sudanese politicians, when our affairs is external threatened, we are not proactive. But when it's a presidential decree for removing somebody, we rebel so fast to deal with ourselves. So for me, it's a question of political maturity, it's a question of political responsibility, and it's a question of showing the nation that I'm a political leader to the country. Because how do you define politics? These are the events where we define politics, how it works. So for me, that is the answer, is that our MPs, as they're in recess, this could have been a case of an emergency recall of the parliament from recess. At EALA level, now we're going to almost the 3rd day, our MPs at EALA level could have raised a motion, and at the head of state summit, we would have tabled a case. But unfortunately, if we are not proactive in all these events, Kenya may legitimize the border. Because what is legitimacy? Legitimacy, you show your strength, you show your border, you show your military, like what my brother was saying. They're already in Nadapal. When they come into Nadapal, they're pushing us back. Even in, look at Elegu, how Uganda took it over. Just build by force, by everything, put a force, and then you have the soldiers that are not well prepared for such emotions, they just withdraw. So for me, it's really a national call that requires national leadership and political commitment for us to protect our territory.
Thank you so much, Edmond Yakani. Indeed, there are some things, if we go through them as a citizen of the country, sometimes they always give us depression and give us a sad face. Uganda in 2011, 2012, when some of us, especially myself, was a student there at high school, the border of Uganda was in Bibia. And from nowhere, they moved toward Numili, and they are now currently in Ilego. From Bibia to Ilego. And government of South Sudan never take any inch to move the border since we gain independent, either toward Uganda or toward Congo or toward Ethiopia or even Kenya. We are always busy on how to do our usual business within Juba, which is very sad. Thank you so much for your perspective, and thank you so much, our viewers, for your question. I will yield it back to my co-host, Abraham Adit, to put his remark and then we'll give it back to our guest to give us his last parting shot before we end our show. Remember, this is just a briefing. We'll still organize one of debate about this, of which government official will reach out to them to invite some of them, either from J1, that is a presidential palace, or the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, or even parliamentarians will reach out to one of them, including the Yali members from East Africa Legislative Assembly. Thank you so much, Abraham Adit and Edmond Yakani.
Thank you, Majoka and Edmund. This is a very important topic to discuss, because the borders of South Sudan, if you can see, 6 countries border with us, has took our land away from us, and our government and the opposition are busy head-to-head each other, and they are not focused on the borders. Even Sudan, that we separate from them, they are now taking our land away. You see what happened when in Illich supposed to be our land. You see, now it's no longer us, and you can see a BI too. BI is one of the dispute area. You see, and our government is not focused on this issue. This is the big national issue that we should, when we got our independence in 2011, those are supposed, the government of South Sudan, this was supposed to be at the top of their agenda to discuss, because all our borders should be secure. Whoever country took our land away, we should bring it back, claim it back. Because Kenya, as I know, because I grew up in that area. So I spent 10 years in Kakuma. Even I heard when I was there that the border between Sudan and Kenya is supposed to be key base. I mean Lodwar, not in Lobosogio. Supposed to be Lodwar is our border between Kenya and Sudan. But now they're moving inside South Sudan. Nairus now they are going inside Nairus. Leave alone Nadapal. You see? So this thing is a big challenge. We are calling out to the government of South Sudan and even opposition that leave all this different aside and come to the table to do the nation building, to bring our borders back. So this is the really serious case. So that's my 1 cent to put in. We will make this topic as an agenda of Lake State Media. We will be reaching out a lot to discuss this. We want to raise alarm to these leaders so that they can talk those countries like Kenya and Uganda. So our land, we need those land back. So thank you, Edmund. I will yield my microphone back to you and put your last word before we close the show. Thanks.
Thank you very much. My appeal will be a call to our South Sudanese legal practitioner. Let them start filing court case. I think we need to pursue all possible means. As our government is pursuing a slow approach of political engagement, we should start pursuing a legal engagement. I think East African Court of Justice, we should start filing cases. So I wish that our legal experts should start volunteering to take a national action in compiling evidence and start putting a case. And I think we have enough evidence that are existing, and I think this evidence, we can utilize them. That's the call I like to make to all our South Sudan legal practitioners, that's an issue that we should handle it. While back home, we call for peace and stability so that we regain the energy of protecting our international borders. If we keep on engaging ourselves, we may lose it and may not have it. So that's the call that I'd like to make as a final remark in this show.
Thank you so much, Mr. Edmund Yakani, for your last remark and for your call. Definitely, that is the same call of Lake State Media, which Abraham did put it clearly, that our mandate is always to bring to the attention of our government and government officials something which they always give less attention to. And we will do whatever we can jointly with activists such as Edmund Yakani and other South Sudanese of goodwill to raise alarm to our government. We cannot always bury our mind in under the sun, and we claim that we are patriotic and we claim we have the nation. If we continue with this path, even our children will only remain with the Juba the border will be River Nile. And from Chirkat all the way to East Africa will be taken and will only be confined on the other side of the River Nile. And we will be sad to hear that in our grave, because most of us will no longer be alive by then. So it is our hope to you South Sudanese who are watching us, those who asked questions before, and some of you are commenting under this live show. Kindly share this live show, and we will arrange another interview or discussion to bring more panelists to come and discuss about this. Even if it means we reach out to Kenyans, our counterpart, to come and talk, we will do that if we have possibilities of reaching out to them, because this is a serious concern and we cannot let it go in that way. Thank you so much, and may God bless all of you. Mr. Edmond Yakani, we are grateful for your time, and keep doing what you are doing. South Sudanese will not appreciate you now, but the soil that you were born in, that is South Sudan, will always appreciate you. Thank you so much, and may God bless you all. May God bless South Sudan, and may God bless our continent, Africa. Thank you.
We Santo Man Kolnyang Mike Cholgrangawan Yubit Luping Yarul Pandiri Shet Maniel Anaketon Niel Jilo Wenetona Dol. I think a kick Kega Buka de Anyalinya dia kuika tingrin Jemanalie when I jangarong a jedu Kega Parandi Madina Maja Kubo Makur Kega Boliken Kuai Tatian Wagaridin Kegela Emmanuel when a man you go I think a kick Kega Buka de Anyalinya dia kuika tingrin Jemanalie when I jangarong a jedu Kega Parandi Madina Maja Kubo Makur Kega Boliken Kuai Tatian Wagaridin Kegela Emmanuel when a man you go I think a kick Kega Buka de Anyalinya dia kuika